Thank you. As usual, I'll ask each person present to confirm that they can hear and be heard. Where practicable, please also have your video switched on. And we should have the following members of the forum. So if you could just please confirm that you can hear and be heard. Kate Andrews.
Yes, can hear and be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Alison Banner. New member this morning, so welcome to Zayla Beecham.
Yep, I can hear you, and hopefully I can be heard.
You certainly can. Thank you very much and welcome. And another new member, Emma Blankley.
Oh, it might be my internet connection. I might join on my phone instead just now.
Okay. Beverly Blower.
Good morning, everyone. I confirm I can hear everyone, and I hope I can be heard.
You certainly can. Thank you, Beverly. Adam Breakwell. Adam Breakwell. Alex Davis.
Hi, good morning. I can hear and see, just about.
Thank you, Alex. Stuart Debenham.
I confirm I can hear you, certainly.
Thank you very much. Paul Deneen.
Yes, I can hear and I can see and I can be heard, I think, hopefully.
You certainly can. Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
Richard Foster. Nikki Gilbert. Andy Gosling. Georgie Griffin. Kate Joyner. Myself, obviously, I hope that everyone can hear me. Tim Knapp. Chris Lewandowski.
Good morning, all. Yes, I can see and hear you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Rose Lloyd.
Morning, I can see and hear you all.
Thank you very much. Hayley Manns. Gemma Martin. Claire Perez. Rachel Usher. Another new member, Dave Williams. Okay, thank you for confirming. And officers who may be in attendance, Jen Priest Clark.
I can see you and hear you, thank you.
Thank you very much. Stacey Carter.
Hi, Chair. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Farr isn't joining us this morning. Isabel Gibbs.
It's Biggs, but good morning. I can hear and see you.
Oh, sorry. You're absolutely right. My fault. Hilary Jones. Kirsty Lister.
Morning, everyone. I can see and hear fine.
Thank you very much. Louise Tanner. I don't think is joining us. Wendy Pickering. No Wendy this morning. And Councillor Ivan Powell.
Yeah, morning, Chair. I can see and hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel, and a recording will be available via the Council's website shortly after the meeting has concluded. Can I remind you, as usual, to raise your hand icon to indicate that you wish to speak, and please remember to lower your hand again after you've spoken. Where forum members are required to vote on an item, we'll conduct an electronic vote, and if there are any problems with the electronic vote, I'll ask each member in turn to indicate verbally if they're for, against, or abstaining. If a forum member hasn't been present for whatever reason due to a technical failure, then they shouldn't vote on that item. Are there any questions about the procedures before we continue? No. Great. Thank you very much. Can the clerk please confirm any apologies that we've received this morning?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. From members, we've got apologies from Hayley Manns, Gemma Martin and Richard Foster. A couple of apologies from officers. We've got Hilly Drones, the Head of Additional Needs, Louise Tanner, the Head of Learning and Achievement, and Liz Farr, the Service Director, Education, Skills and Learning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And are there any name substitutes this morning?
There are no name substitutes, Chair.
Thank you very much. And are there any declarations of interest? I should declare that I chaired Budget Working Group a fortnight ago due to the fact that Richard wasn't there, so I shall be referring to myself for comments from the Budget Working Group, which feels a little bit daft, but there we are. Any other declarations of interest this morning? No. Okay.
I see none, Chair.
Thank you. So that brings us to agenda item 4 of the minutes, which is to approve and sign the minutes of the meeting that was held back on the 20th of January. I didn't see any matters arising that aren't dealt with elsewhere on the agenda. Did anybody else have anything that they would like to raise? No? Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. In that case, Clerk, can we bring up the voting screen, please? If you weren't present at the last meeting, you should select the abstention option at the vote. I hope everybody can now see the voting screen. I can. Thank you, Clerk.
There's a couple of hands missing there, Chair, but we have a majority, so they can officially be approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So we'll move on to the next agenda item. And at this point, I'm going to use the Chair's discretion to move agenda item 8 forward in the agenda, to be first due to colleagues from the council needing to be at various other meetings during the morning. So I'm going to call, please, on our manager for additional needs, Michelle Giampala, to present the DSG deficit management plan and SEND reforms. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I will just wait for the clerk to share the slides.
Can everybody see that okay?
Perfect.
I can see that now. Thank you, Clark.
Thanks, Clark. Next slide, please.
I am a little bit sluggish this end, Michelle, so please bear
No,
with.
that's okay. No worries at all.
It's
waking up this morning.
Yeah, it's not moving on. Wakey, wakey. It's gonna go straight through the presentation in a minute, I can see.
We're going to be at the end before I've started.
Yeah, apologies. It's right, let's see if that's better. Okay,
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Lovely. Thanks ever so much, Clark. As I'm sure colleagues will be aware, we have a deficit management plan that we are currently working very closely towards. That management plan is grouped into 4 work streams at the moment. So a focus on intervention first, managing the demands, increasing the sufficiency of local places, and then the financial management adjustments. Those work streams are replicated in the SEND action plan, and I know regular updates are provided to you both through the budget working group and schools forum. Next slide, please. It's thinking about it. Thanks, Clark. Okay, so in terms of intervention first, we have some really exciting projects that continue to grow and develop. So we have our Harvest project that is now up and running. We have a number of young people enrolled and attending. We have our St Martin's short-term and long-term commission places to support young people with SEMH. Again, we are looking there for a September 26 start. And we have seen some really positive work with our inclusion outreach service, so the IOS. We have seen a number of referrals there and have seen some really positive outcomes coming from that. So we've had a number of advisory visits, short stay interventions and long stay interventions, and the crisis intervention particularly is seeing some really positive work happening. A new part of that is the Key Stage 3 and Me workshop. So that is a new programme that has come online in the past couple of months. We are again seeing some fantastic work happening there within our secondary schools, and our secondary schools are very, very engaged with that. So we're very grateful to those schools for becoming involved in that. And our inclusive classroom project as well. We have 3 schools that are currently involved in that pilot. And again, we will be able to provide more impact data shortly as that is being collected termly. Thank you. Next slide, please, Clark. So our inclusion service, as we've just talked about there, are really developing new projects in terms of that intervention first strand. One of those is around parent workshops. And we have had the first one of those that has happened, and we've had some excellent feedback from that. And we will continue to grow and develop that part of the work stream. Thank you, Clark. Next slide, please. And again, a further new project within our inclusion service is around support strategies for support staff in a sort of surgery kind of format. Again, we have seen some really positive response from this. Again, we're very grateful to schools who are really getting on board with this. And again, we are working towards that being a sustainable model of support alongside those parent workshops that I've just talked about from the last slide. Thanks, Clark. Next slide, please. Alongside the intervention first work that I've just talked about, obviously sufficiency, as you will know, is a really key part of the work that we are developing. We unfortunately had the news that our free school would not be progressing. Instead, they have decided that they're going to top up the High Needs Capital Grant, which is spread over 3 years. As you will be aware, however, that is significantly less than the value of a new school. And I know our director, Liz Farr, has made representations on that, and we are awaiting further news. We are seeing some fantastic developments with Hampton Dean, where there will be an expansion that is happening there. I'm sure you would have, many of you will have driven past and seen that work that is ongoing. We are working with the DfE at the moment on the Westfield rebuild, with feasibility all being well being completed within 2026. Ryfield, again, another development that is ongoing there with a number of places. Unfortunately, we've had a little bit of a delay with that due to some roofing issues, but we are hoping to be up and open and running by January 27. Further places again within Ayleston, again, is really positive. And we are, again, expanding that tier 2 secondary alternative provision with 75 new places from 28-29, and then further 25 places from 29-30. So real expansion that you can see there in terms of that sufficiency to create those school places for our young people. Thank you, Clark. Next slide, please. And obviously a key part of this work is around the financial work stream and the high needs deficit. You can see there we have got a mitigation plan that can potentially reduce that by 52.3 million, which I'm sure you will agree is a significant piece of work. So that is the briefing on the deficit plan there. Clark, are you happy for me to move straight on to the white paper briefing?
Yeah,
I was muted. Chair, did you want to just ask for any questions on this item before we stop sharing for a second?
Wondering if anybody wanted to come in and make any comments on the deficit management plan at this point. There's no doubt that there's an awful lot of work gone into this, and the budget working group recognised the amount of work that's gone into putting this additional provision in place, and we are starting to see the rewards of that. Anybody else got any thoughts or comments that they would like to share, or any questions? No, I can't see any hands at the moment, Clark. So no, I think we're ready to move on to the second part then, please, Michelle. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I'll just wait for those slides to come up. Thank you, Clark. So as I'm sure everybody will have seen, the white paper has now been produced and has been released alongside a SEND reform plan as well. And this is obviously a key piece of work that we are engaging with at the moment. So in terms of a brief summary, so the schools white paper sets out the government's long-term plan to reform the education system, both so that high standards and inclusion are better delivered. Obviously, we are aware of the challenges within the sector in terms of attainment, disadvantaged, SEND, additional needs and attendance, and it responds to those challenges in those key areas. This summary hopefully will just give you a sort of brief flavour of those changes that are outlined. Both the white paper and the SEND reform plan are both rather hefty documents, so hopefully this summary will provide a sort of brief overview of those changes. The proposals represent the long-term direction of travel, the changes in the targets that will roll out those stages following consultation within the sector. So that consultation I'll come to in a second ends in May. So we've got a month to be able to respond to these consultations. Thank you, Clark. Next slide, please. So a key part of this is the ambitious education for all pupils. The government has established national targets to ensure that every child achieves their potential. That includes better academic standards. So the goal is for children to leave their secondary school education with an average grade 5 or higher across their GCSEs. It wants to halve the disadvantage gap, so supporting children from those low income backgrounds to achieve a full grade higher almost in each GCSE than they do today. It wants to recover the learning time through an increase to the national attendance rate. Again, I'm sure it has been widely shared that attendance has been a significant challenge within schools, particularly since the pandemic. And an increasing sense of belonging for pupils, which is a key part of success for young people within schools. The paper recognises importantly that these ambitions can only be delivered by an expert workforce, and as such there is a key package within those reforms to boost teacher recruitment and retention, such as improving maternity pay and a scheme to incentivise head teachers to work in those high needs areas. Thank you, Clark. Next slide, please. So the SEND system reform is a further key part of these consultations and these changes. So there is a focus on a better support for mainstream settings and earlier intervention. And the government has announced a series of initiatives and significant changes to that current approach. So there is going to be an inclusive mainstream fund, which is in addition to the current existing core SEND funding, and all schools can expect to receive additional funds to support targeted and small group interventions. There is a lot of work at the moment going on around the Experts at Hand service, where schools can draw on a number of multi-agency professionals such as EPs, so educational psychologists, speech language therapists and occupational therapists. There is going to be a national inclusion standard, so an evidence-based library of resources to guide how schools are meeting the needs of children. And schools will be required to publish an inclusion strategy, which then goes into further detail about how resources are deployed to benefit those children with SEND. And that replaces the current SEND information report. Thank you, Clark. Next slide, please. And the sort of further development around EHCPs and individual support plans, again, has been much publicised. So the government are proposing that EHCPs, education, health and care plans, are reserved for only the most complex of young people and complex of special educational needs. ISPs will happen for all children with additional needs, and schools will be legally required to develop that plan that describes a pupil's day-to-day provision and what that support is. And EHCPs, as I say, will be for those complex needs, and they were based around what are being called specialist packages of support or special provision packages, and that sets out the evidence-based intervention and resources required. The SEND changes are expected to take place from 2029, and all existing duties and rights of pupils will remain. So it is essentially normal standards. We carry on as we are for the time being. Thank you, Clark. Last slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier on, you can have your say in this. So the government are asking for responses to that consultation from anybody essentially really with that interest. So from obviously children, young people and their families, really important, but also from teachers, leaders, local authorities and representative groups. And the link is there for you to be able to do that. Thank you very much, Clark. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do members or officers have any questions or comments that they would like to make on that presentation? I know we visited the first part. Any particularly on the white paper overview? Any comments that anyone would like to make? I think I saw a hand up. Chris Lewandowski, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to take this opportunity to publicly offer the support of the teachers that I represent for the efforts of Liz Farr and her team. We realise a lot of work has gone into this SEND reform and what they've been doing and the direction it's going in. They have our total support. We realise that she's had to make many difficult decisions, often regarding finance, and we understand her frustration with decisions made by DFE and the fact they've repeatedly changed them. So she has our sympathy, she has our support. With regard to the white paper that's out for consultation, we know that although global financial figures are available for the whole country, there are not specific figures available for implementing those reforms in Hereford. And therefore it is very difficult to actually comment upon something when you don't know whether there'll be sufficient money for it. We suspect that there may not be sufficient money because in the past, Herefordshire has been poorly funded, which is a difficulty. We are also fully aware that many of the proposals in the white paper may be very suitable for urban areas where you have larger schools closer together, but for more sparsely populated areas with small schools, such as Herefordshire, they may not fit quite so easily into government proposals. To actually implement them in Herefordshire may actually cost more because of its typical factors of sparsity and small schools. Can someone please let Liz know of our support and these comments? Thank you. Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just respond to that? Is that okay?
Of course you can, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Yeah, I really appreciate your words there. They are very much appreciated. I know obviously this will be minted and passed on to Liz, but I will share those as well. Yes, we agree with, I agree with everything that you've just said there. We have raised those concerns with the DFE around the detail that sits underneath these reforms, because it's really difficult to respond to them when we don't know that full detail that sits underneath that, around what that funding is going to look like, around what the experts at hand offer needs to look like. We have shared that directly. We've been at a number of DFE events over the course of the past couple of weeks, as you can imagine. We were in London only on Wednesday of this week, and we shared that exact thing, that there needs to be further consideration for rural areas and the impact for us in terms of delivering those reforms. So we are actively feeding that back, Christopher, to the DFE. So yes, you're absolutely right, and I'm grateful for your words there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Clark, did you want to jump in? I see you've got a hand up just before I go to Mr. Neen.
Thank you, Chair. It's just Adam Breakwell. I just wanted to check he can see and hear. He joined during the presentation.
Okay. Adam, can you see and hear clearly?
I can. My apologies. I was called away on a little safeguarding incident first thing.
Not a problem at all. It's nice that you could join us. Thank you very much. Paul Deneen.
Can I ask two questions, Michelle? First of all, there's no mention in your summary of anything to do with the academies and the proposals of the government for local authorities to set up academies. That's the first thing. And the second thing is there anything about registering pupils who are not at school, who are working from home as well? Because that seemed to be an area of concern as well. So just those two issues, please. If you could comment on those, I'd be most grateful.
Absolutely. So yes, so your first point, Paul, there around academisation and that coming within the sort of local authority. I know that Louise and Liz have a meeting with the DfE on Monday around that very subject to clarify what that looks like. Because as with much of the white paper, and as I've just mentioned there, particularly around the SEND reforms, a lot of the detail that sits underneath this isn't out yet. And therefore it's really difficult to comment and move things forward when we don't have the key detail that sits underneath it. So I know that Liz and Lou have that meeting on Monday with the DfE around academisation and what that looks like. So we will be able to provide further detail in there. So I will make a note, if that's okay, Paul, that we provide a written update for that.
Because the previous government were not keen on local authorities setting up academies at all, and this current government seems to be pushing more towards local authorities, or certainly indicating that that's an option. But as you said, the devil's in the detail. And then the second thing about registering of pupils who are not.
Yes. Yep. So do you mean specifically around children who are electively home educated?
Yes, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So
sorry, can I just add to, and what funding is required there from the authority, or whether any funding is required? Because my understanding is there's a substantial amount of funding having to be provided for that. So just want to pick that really.
I don't, again, as you've just said, Paul, the devil is in the detail, isn't it? And we don't have that detail yet. At the moment, the government keeps swinging on this issue around the registration of electively home educated pupils and the powers of the local authority to refuse for a child to be electively home educated. So at the moment, that keeps swinging between it's going to be something that comes in and something that doesn't. Again, we haven't had any further detail on that. So again, if you're okay, Paul, with that, I will seek further clarification on that and provide a written update to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, what would be helpful, I think, Michelle, if that's all right, is what numbers there are in Herefordshire.
Yes, absolutely.
Funding is available, because if we're talking about funding, then what I didn't see on the budget, the previous budget, was the amount of money that's allocated. And maybe something that there ought to be a discussion at the budget working forum to say, well, okay, because I was told recently about £5 million had to be spent, which seems an incredible amount of money. And somebody has to be held responsible for it and how it's being spent. And I just need to understand whether that was accurate or whether it was just a myth.
Yeah, I don't know, Paul, in terms of an exact figure for you. So I wouldn't want to comment on that. I can say that I know we have seen increasing numbers of children in elective home education, as has the rest of the country. But I can certainly provide that detail for you around a specific number and the funding that sits alongside that.
And if that could go on to with Paul's permission, if that can go on to the budget working party as a heading to be reviewed every meeting, what are the numbers? Because I think there are such situations where sometimes there's home election, for example, until the end of a key stage, and then suddenly it's a transfer into a high school through GCSEs or whatever. So it's just about where the numbers. Probably geographical areas may be helpful as well, and what funding is available for with regard to that. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. Much appreciated.
No worries. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's worth noting, if I may, having chaired the budget working group meeting, that there were we noted the potential implications of the reforms, and particularly the re-emergence of exactly what you were talking about, Paul, with the groups of schools working together. And our concerns really were as to how broad the consultation is likely to be. There's talking about consulting in the second half of the spring term and going through into the summer term. But it's who's going to be consulted and how's that? And we're lacking detail on that at the moment. And that was a bit of feedback from budget working group, really, with the concerns from that group following on from this. there's no doubt that there is a huge government drive behind this. I heard Bridget Phillipson speak at the ASCL conference last Friday, and there's great determination to bring this about during this Parliament. So we'll have to wait and see, as you said, and see where we are in terms of the detail. Are there any other comments on either of those points? No. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for presenting those for me. So if we move back to the agenda, which takes us back to item 5, which is the recoupment from schools' budgets for permanent exclusions and hospital education. And this item is for Schools Forum to consider and give a view on the revised process for recouping budget shares from schools in relation to both permanently excluded pupils and to pupils receiving hospital education. And I call on our interim finance business partner to introduce this item. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So yes, as mentioned, this is an update on how Herefordshire is going to be recouping from schools budget shares from 25-26. So previously, as I'm sure you're all aware, in Herefordshire, the way the recoupment used to work for excluded children or children that was being educated elsewhere was that the adjustment was made directly between HPRS or H3 and the schools, and that transaction was between those two provisions. Herefordshire is now bringing that process back in-house and taking responsibility of that recoupment. This is in line with the DfE guidance, and what will happen is HPRS will get completely fully funded on a place and top-up funding mechanism, similar to how the special schools get funded, again in line with the guidance, and then we will collate that income into our high needs block and monitor that. At the minute, the way it works was HPRS was getting a deduction on their SLA, and so they will receive their full funding and we will monitor that process. Again, all in line with the DfE guidance. What that income will do will offset the pressures within the high needs block, which is similar to what the income was doing in the previous process, because we was paying less out on our SLA. So same process and mechanism to recoup, it's just that Herefordshire will do that directly rather than via the PRU. And the basis of the recoupment is going to be completely in line with the DfE guidance. It will be based on your APT factor values. And so it will be your basic entitlement factor, depending on what key stage the pupil is. And then if they are free school meal, EAL or pupil premium eligible, we will recoup a proportion of that funding as well. So for the permanent excluded pupils, it will be a calculation of those factors prorated for the remaining weeks in the financial year after that 6th day. And if it's the pupils that remain on roll at the school but are receiving education elsewhere, which is mainly your hospital education, we will use the same basis and factor values, but we will charge retrospectively at the end of each term, depending on how many days they have attended that alternative provision. As I mentioned, this is from 25-26 as well. So it was just to note that change in process. So has anyone got any questions on that? Paul?
Is that, when you say 25-26, is retrospective then, rather than 26-27?
Yes, so we have started implementing the process. So the hospital funding is from September 25. The exclusions process, that new process started from 25-26 as well. And so we took this in-house from September, and this was just to update Schools Forum and get them to note this revised process now.
Yeah, if you do, I mean, I can see Bev's on this call as well. I have to say, I think it's very important that we support the children who are in hospital schools. And actually, the new process seems much fairer and easier and much better for the PRU, because it means that rather than having any discussions with schools, the LA take responsibility for it.
I
and
agree.
I think that through if Adam is the vice chair. I can't see, I'm not sure who the vice chair is because I think Paul's back now though. I think he had a fire drill, I think, or fire. Are you okay, Paul?
Yes, thank you. It was just a fault all dealt with. So yes,
Just asking a question about the hospital schools and the funding, and just sort of making the observation that it seems much better for it to be completed through the LA, and that makes it much easier for the PRU to be able to get things sorted. And what worried me was the children who are at the most vulnerable in our hospital. You know, when there's discussions, well, how is this going to be funded? Who's doing it, etc. So I just wanted to offer support for what's proposed, really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beverly Blower.
I just wanted to echo what Paul has just said. It has been a huge help and assistance to us across HPRS, both for the permanently excluded students and for those students that go to H3. It has supported us no end. So thank you very much.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Beverly. Any other thoughts or comments at this point? No. Okay.
Nope.
Yeah, could we just check that Nikki Gilbert could hear and see? I've joined the meeting.
Yes. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for joining us. You can see?
Yeah, I can. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry for being late.
That's right. I'm sorry that the fire alarm just went off. That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you for that presentation. So it's just for noting. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the Dedicated Schools Grant 25-26 Q3 outturn. To provide an update to Schools Forum on the Dedicated Schools Grant outturn as of 31st of December 2025, which is Q3. So I call on our Head of Strategic Finance to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Right, hopefully you can see my screen. Has that come through okay?
Yes, I can see that. Thank you.
Lovely. Right, okay then. So yes, this is an update for you, just to let you know where we are at the Q3 position. Right, so the slides I have for you then are just taken from kind of the body of the report, really, just to focus our attention on those kind of pressured areas. The first slide here just sets out the overall dedicated schools grant allocation that we received for 25-26, which is overall £113.4 million worth of funding. And what we can see in the next column is really how we're doing against those allocations that we've received. And at the moment, everything is on target, with the exception, obviously, of the high needs block, which we anticipate. Now, when we set the budget for 25-26, we were anticipating a £20 million deficit based on the needs that we were experiencing for our pupils in the high needs block. And at the moment, it's looking like we're around about 18.2 million deficit. So that is actually a slight improvement on the budget deficit that we're expecting. So just looking at the next slide, this gives you a little bit more information in terms of where that forecast underspend, even though we're still overspending, but that reduction in the overspend has materialised. And as you can see there, we've got £4.6 million worth of underspending in relation to fees to independent schools and alternative provision, and in complex needs particularly as well. And that is being offset by pressures that we can see on SEN top-ups for post-16 and for our mainstream specials and PRUs. So that, you know, there's some other bits and pieces, some smaller amounts of adjusted budgets there and outturn, but really those are the bulk of the changes in the variance for us. So what we've tried to do for the next slide is just give you a bit of information, a bit more detail there, and circulated that on the slides in advance as well, so that you can see kind of line by line how we have to build the budget up and how our funding is provided, and then really the gap then, our funding requirement, what we would ideally need for the high needs block is really we thought at the start of the year £43.5 million compared to a £23.5 million budget allocation from the DfE. So you can see that's where our 20 million was budgeted for, and then this is the variance on that, which shows that underspend, you know, a reduction in overspend of the 1.8 million. So we've made some progress there, as I say, which is good news. But it still continues to be a really challenging budget, as we know. So I'll stop sharing and pause for questions there.
Thank you, Stacey. Paul Devine.
Yeah, interesting to see how there's been a reduction in the fees to independent schools there, Stacey, which seems to be an outlier because normally it would be increasing. So, is it because a lot of parents are using the marvellous provision we've got in Herefordshire now, or not?
I think there's a combination of things that are happening there, Paul, and I will kind of like let my colleagues step in if they want to say anything in terms of the detail, because I'm not privy to all of the detail on that. But I think it's around a mix of the basis that we set for the 20 million and the budget that we identified. The demand isn't quite as much as we were anticipating against that, but there is still significant demand there. But yes, I don't know whether my colleague Izzy or John want to kind of step in. Oh, Michelle, I can see Michelle's raised her hand as well.
Yes, do you want me to jump in there?
Please, yeah.
So part of what I talked about earlier on in terms of our presentation is around sufficiency, Paul, and I think that's a really important part of what we're doing around reducing those costs to independent schools. We are working really hard on increasing the sufficiency of places across our county for this very reason, and it's going to be a really important part of the reforms moving forward as well. So I think, alongside the excellent work of our colleagues in finance, it's been a key part of our plan moving forward, is around those sufficiency places.
Are those residential places, or are they non-residential, or a mixture of both?
So the sufficiency that we've got in place at the moment is largely non-residential. So I don't know whether Stacey's got any of that detail sort of in that split of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think I have got that on the slide and the information here, but we can provide that for you if that is of interest. Absolutely, we can share that.
I'm just interested in the fact that the numbers, we're not spending according to budget, and I was anticipating that to be much higher. So that somebody's done a really good job there to, reduce that budget area on supporting, young people and families who don't need that, independent school input. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Nikki Gilbert.
Yeah, I was just interested to know whether or not this is probably Michelle as opposed to more finance, but with regards to the independent specialists that I know are being used in county, I'm also aware that possibly if parents aren't able to get a space in one of the maintained schools, they might be opting for home education as opposed to going to one of the others. Is that part of this as well? It's probably too early to track, I suppose, but I don't know how the funding is impacted by parents who are opting for home ed, because obviously the funding is obviously not then sent to the independent school where they might have opted not to send their child. It's just, just interested. Do we know?
Shall I jump in there, Chair? Is that okay?
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, please.
I couldn't answer that, Nikki. I think it's a really good question. And again, we can look at the numbers of those that were looking at an independent special school place and have then gone into elective home education instead of that. We can look at the numbers for that and provide that detail for you if you would like us to.
Just interested. No, I don't want to give you any extra work.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on the outturn?
There are a couple more slides, Paul, so should I carry on and share those now?
If you would, yes, please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
lovely. Thank you. I just wanted to pause for questions just because there was obviously quite a lot of information there as well.
No, there was a lot.
Okay, then hopefully you can see my slides again. Yeah.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Right. Lovely. Okay, so what I wanted to kind of talk through as well, which is noted in the report, is around the cumulative deficit position, and also touch on the new grant that's been announced as well. So this slide here just sets out obviously that cumulative position that we have with the deficit that's been building up across the high needs block. With that 18.2 million, we are now looking at a 38.2 million pound deficit at the end of March 2026. So that is obviously starting to ramp up. It's starting to accumulate and get quite a sizable figure there. So what we have is the DfE announced on the 23rd of February the new high needs stability grant, which really sets out that 90% of historic DSG deficits on the high needs block, up to and including the 31st of March 2026. So wherever we get to by the end of that period, they will fund up to 90% of that, and then the remaining balance, which is the 10%, would need to be covered from Herefordshire general fund reserves. So based on the information that we've got here at the Q3, that would roughly look like around 34 of high needs stability grant funding, and then we would have another the balance, really 4 million, to be able to kind of offset that figure from within the reserves. Now this is kind of a bit of a double-edged sword, really, because obviously there's still a significant need for Herefordshire to be able to fund. 4 million is a lot of money, and there's still that desire really that we need to make sure that we keep control of the spend, stop it reducing as much as possible, because the other financial challenges that the council faces, this still has a potential to be a real significant problem for the council, even at the 10% value. So what we've got to do is as Michelle's alluded to, we've got lots of work to do on the SEND reform, and we've got a plan that we need to get approved by the DfE. And once that's been approved, and we've got the documentation there that's come through since we met with Budget Working Group, there's quite a detailed set of papers that need to be provided back by I think it's the 19th of June to the DfE. And once they've released that, once they've signed off our plan, we would then potentially get the funding either in the autumn or into the spring, dependent on whether we're in the first tranche of authorities that get that signed off or not. So there's a lot of work to do on that plan, and yes, it's very important that we put a lot of resource into that, because it's worth a lot of money for us. So what the DfE have also announced, although the devil is in the detail, as we know, and things will come out as more information is provided, but deficits that arise from 26-27 and 27-28, the DfE have noted that they will continue to take an appropriate and proportionate approach, though it will not be unlimited. So we wait to see what comes out on that basis. But our understanding is really from 28-29, basically any overspend at that point with the SEND will form part of the government's grant, and it won't fall to the general fund after that point for local authorities. So there's a lot of work to do, and there's still some uncertainties there, but it is positive news that we have some guidance that the vast majority of the high needs deficit will be addressed.
Thank you very much. I mean, in terms of the conversation at Budget Working Group, which followed that presentation, I mean, it's clear that there's an awful lot of significant work that's gone into trying to reduce this, and a huge amount of thanks and praise go to the team that have been involved with that. But we are whatever happens going to end up with 10% of whatever's left. So it's noted that further challenges will remain, and that this important piece of work really needs to continue. Those are the thoughts from Budget Working Group. Any thoughts from anybody else this morning on the remaining slides which Stacey's just presented to us? There seems to be a dearth of hands going up, Stacey. So in that case, as this item was just for noting, we'll move on to the next.
Chair, we do have Paul Dineen's got his hand up. Thank you.
Apologies, Paul. I was looking away for a second. And you're muted currently.
I take the opportunity, as Chris said earlier, but he talked about the staff at the Herefordshire Council doing a great job, but also to thank the Budget Working Group. I mean, obviously, we come to this meeting knowing this is all these items have been looked at thoroughly and professionally, with a view to making sure that the children and students in Herefordshire get the best deal. So, just an opportunity to say thank you to you and those who support you and those involved in having these discussions, because it's interesting times. I mean, I think the funding seems to be a bit more generous for special needs, and if they take the whole or the majority of the budget on at government level, that makes it much easier for the local authorities. So we just wait to see exactly what happens, because 2029 could be an interesting year, because it may be an election year as well. So who knows what's going on. But just to say thank you, really, Paul, to you and the group for the work you do.
Thank you, Paul. I'll pass that on to Richard, who's now chairing the group, and to the rest of the group at the next meeting. Chris Lewandowski.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned by the word proportionate. Now, we know that for the current deficit, 90% is paid by the government and 10% locally. But for future, they say it's still going to be proportionate. They don't say they're going to pay for it all. So could that be a 90% government and 10% locally?
It's a very good question, Chris. Stacey, have you got any more idea on this?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had the details of what those future years look like yet in terms of the government announcement. But what we do know is that they are very clear that it is only the high needs block deficit that they will cover. And we do know that there's an expectation that any surplus reserves that we have across the rest of our block, excluding school balances, would need to be offsetting that deficit. So I think we're kind of continuing as business as usual in the sense of the treatment of the overspend of the reserve and any underspends that we have. And I will touch a little bit on that when I present the 26-27 budget report. But yes, there's always a worry that not having the full picture, and obviously having to set budgets going into 26-27 and wondering what that proportionate and appropriate response will be. But we are treating the reserve and the high needs deficit in the way that we should be, and using any surpluses that we do have against that deficit. So and if we can prove our SEN reform plan is suitable and it meets the requirements of the DFE, yeah, we're doing everything that we can, really, I think, and it will be down to central government then to move the goalpost potentially.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Chris. Any other questions or points at this time? No. Okay, thank you. That takes us quite nicely, actually, then into agenda item 7, which is the high needs budget 26-27. And this item is to propose the high needs budget for 26-7 to the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People. Dedicated schools grant funding for the high needs block in 26-27 is 25.14 million. At this stage, the funding for the high needs block is provisional and subject to final adjustments based on actual termly take-up. The funding values and formula calculations are in accordance with the national funding formula as set out by the government. And once again, I call upon our Head of Strategic Finance to introduce the report. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, hopefully my screen is up again and you can see this. Right, okay, the challenge of the high needs block budget for 26-27. It's been quite a lot of work that the team have put in to get us to this point, and as an accountant it feels really counterintuitive to have a budget that doesn't balance and set in a deficit. So it's been quite a challenge for us, but we've done our best with it. So where we are is we obviously had the provisional allocation on the 17th of December, and we've set out for you there in the first slide, which is taken from the report, where we are in terms of 26-27 allocation with the recoupment and the position as it stands there. We've also shown you 25-26, so you can see the movement there. So in the top section of the slide, you can see that our net high needs block is 25.1 million. pounds there, and that is after £5.5 million worth of recoupment, as the DfE call it, which goes off to various other providers, you know, independent schools, academies, and post-16 kind of provision. And what we have then is we have our net budget that gets held at Herefordshire for ourselves. Now, what we have is, you can see that the £1.9 million worth of increase there in that table underneath, the vast majority of that, like virtually all of it, relates to those grants that the DfE combined within from being separate grants into the funding formula for 26-27. So actually there is hardly any new funding at all, and I think that's a really important point to make, is that, you know, the funding that we're getting is just not sufficient really for what we need. So what we've done is we've gone through the process of setting the budget. A lot of work has gone in, a lot of work from kind of all of us at the council, you know, with Liz and her team. You know, we've really put a joint effort in. And what we've done is we've looked at where we have inflationary uplifts, where we need to build in additional placements because of pupil growth, and we've taken our quarter 3 analysis that we shared in the budget report, and we use that as a starting point. What we also know is that we've got £100,000 worth of funding from the early years block to go into the high needs block, which is for the SEN inclusion fund for those pupils in early years. And we also had a spare £300,000 worth of funding on the central block, which we talked about and Schools Forum agreed that would go into the high needs block. So we've got an extra £400,000 there that's gone into the high needs and are in those figures to help pay for those different things there. Now, following those recoupment deductions and the additional income that's coming from the other blocks, our budget is set at 25.1 million. So that's how we kind of calculate that there. Now, based on all of that work that we've done to determine what the need is for next year, we actually need our budget requirement, or our funding requirement, is actually £50.9 million for 26-27. So as you can see, that has leapt on from where we were in 25-26. So when you compare that to the budget requirement, the budget allocation that we do have, we are proposing to set an in-year deficit of £25.7 million. So that's an increase of 5.7 million compared to those figures that we've just discussed for 25-26. So it is significant, and it is a significant increase there for us. But it still feels, you know, that a lot of work has been done to try and mitigate that, to stop it from being even more exponentially larger than it could have been. So what I've done for you there is I've set out the details to show you again in that grey section, the high needs block budget requirement, and what we actually do need compared to 25-26. And then we can see that the high needs block allocation, I've shown that underneath there so that you can see the analysis of how all of that is being calculated. Yeah, it's a challenging position, and you know, it's really difficult for us to be able to set a balanced budget given the circumstances that we're in. But that is where we are, and that is what we need us to kind of set to be able to meet the needs of the children that we have in the system for 26-27. And that's it. To stop for questions, I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Stacey. Going back to the budget working group, we did have a fairly healthy discussion on this point. And just looking back over the minutes, you know, one of the concerns that we had was whether the local authorities expected to continue spending without full DfE support. And obviously some of this is included with mandatory expenditure that's due to the SEND Code of Practice. And also that a point that Paul Deneen raised earlier about us having a relatively low funding, despite the number of children that we've got that are requiring support. So there was quite an interesting conversation that went on at Budget Working Group. Budget Working Group did recommend the budget as has been presented, and we'll come to a vote on that in a moment when others have had a chance to ask questions. Paul, I believe your hand was up first. Thank you.
I support the proposal. I just wanted to, Stacey, if you could talk about comparisons with other areas in terms of their overspends, etc. Where are we, say, for example, with regards to, say, Worcestershire and Shropshire, Gloucestershire, in terms of the, our overspend?
Absolutely. I mean, we, you know, in Herefordshire, we are very fortunate that we have actually done a very good job of maintaining containing the overspend. Some local authorities, and I don't have the figures to hand, Paul, unfortunately, off the top of my head, but I do know that our neighbours are struggling more significantly with their dedicated schools grants. I know metropolitan councils that have been in deficits from sort of like 14, 15 onwards, you know, and they are huge, sizable deficits now. So I think that we are in a stronger place, even though we are still struggling with our deficit, you know, and we've seen that rise over the last couple of years. We are still in a stronger place than other neighbouring authorities. Yeah, it's a difficult position. It's a difficult position.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. Nikki Gilbert.
Yeah, I think this is just, I know nobody's sort of picking on anybody anyway, but the, unless I'm very much mistaken, I think the main driver in this ongoing overspend with high needs, it can be traced back to when EHCPs started going up to 25, because no additional funding was necessarily allocated. So what's essentially happened over time, and this is why, you know, we're actually educating ongoing adults, and no other funding stream is expected to do that. So just to explain to those people who might just have come in when EHCPs first started, you know, when they used to cease when people left further education, but actually that was sort of 19. But introducing the option right up to 25, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is in still education up until that point. But when the plans were created to have that option, there is no provision beyond school age that is not independent. So anybody, you know, so you've got the tech, but if there's no course in Hereford and Ludlow College and you've still got young people who want to carry on their education based on their EHCP, all of the provisions other than Hereford and Ludlow College and Hoople, all of the others are independent. And that there was no additional funding given, bearing in mind they added on 6 years entitlement to education. So there is no way that this will ever balance, because nothing's been addressed to address those additional 6 years. So it's just a point of interest. But, you know, I think everybody's done a blinking marvellous job keeping it so low, because we've just introduced an addition, well, not just, but, you know, 6 years of additional need. That would be like a secondary school having to keep its students for another 4 years with no additional funding stream. So that is sort of the history behind it. And it's often not talked about, because it's often just seen as everything's just costing more, but that is a huge factor. In addition to obviously the no increase in the £10,000 since 2014, I think people just might need to sort of be aware of that, because nobody can balance a budget that's unbalanceable.
No, thank you, Nikki. Chris Lewandowski.
Thank you, Chair. My question is similar to that of Paul Deneen. Now, we know that the budget is going to continue to rise and there's going to continue to be a deficit. We know that because of proportionate funding, it may come back that 10% of that has to be funded by the local authority. Now, it's all right saying that our deficit is less than other councils' deficits, but we must remember we are a much smaller authority. We have much smaller reserves, I would imagine. Therefore, it might hit us proportionately much harder. What does F40 think about it? Have they had a view, because they'll all be in the same boat? And, you know, if we can work together with other authorities and put pressure on the government to sort this mess out, it would be very useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Stacey, have you got any information on F40 or?
I haven't, to be honest. I can't answer that without Liz being here. If I'm honest, I'm not sure what the latest position is with F40. So apologies that we'd have to take that back, I think.
Yeah, and I was part of the group that went down to the F40 conference last year, Chris, and there has been no conference planned this year. So the information that's coming out of F40 is a little bit quiet at the moment, unless anybody's got any other information. It's an important point, and we know that Herefordshire is underfunded in comparison to other local authorities across the country, and it's something that we need to continue to fight for, and not just due to our size, because obviously it's dependent on per pupil as well, isn't it? Which is incredibly important. I can't answer your question either, unfortunately, but perhaps at a future meeting, Liz might be able to.
It was worth raising, though. Thank you.
Absolutely, and a very important point. Thank you. Are there any other thoughts or questions at this point? No. Okay, thank you. So thank you, everyone. So what we need to do now is to vote to recommend a high needs budget of 50.9 million for 26-27 to be approved by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People as set out in the presentation notes, and the funding gap in 26-27 of 25.7 million. This was supported and recommended by Budget Working Group. So, Clark, could we please bring up the voting screens?
Thank you, Chair. We've got a unanimous decision that can be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. Unless there's any other business to be raised this morning, I believe that brings us to the end of this morning's meeting. Thank you all for attending. The next meeting is on Friday, the 10th of July, 2026. Clark, please can I have confirmation that the live stream has now stopped?
Thank you, Chair. If I could just send apologies for Dave Williams as well before we end the meeting. He sent them a bit late this morning. I will now stop the live stream.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Ended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time and your input this